Today, I speak with Professor Amatzia Baram, who is an alum of the Wilson Center and Professor Emeritus for Middle East History at the University of Haifa. He is an Iraq specialist with a focus on Shia communities. Professor Baram, thank you very much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, Maurice.
Those have been trying times the last few weeks since the unprecedented and shocking Hamas attack on October 7th. And since then, we've seen more than 1,400 Israelis killed. And as a result of Israel's bombardment in Gaza, the latest figures are at 6,000 or 7,000 Palestinians. Where are we today? And what is your reading of the current situation, especially as the IDF prepares for a ground invasion of Gaza?
I think that Israel has no option but to actually invade Gaza on the ground and destroy Hamas, and not the Gaza population, destroy Hamas. It's not easy to separate between them and those who are not Hamas, but this will be a must. And so maybe we should wait another few days, maybe a week, maybe even 2 weeks. But I have some military intelligence backgrounds and so on. I would say we have no choice. We should have to go there, finish Hamas in Gaza, put Gaza under some kind of an international guardianship, can be United Nations, in cooperation with the Palestinian Authority, which is ruling over the West Bank, and gradually advance Gaza into peacetime and develop it. That's what I think. But there is no way out of a ground invasion, as I see it.
So many of the region's leaders have been warning about a ground invasion, particularly given that the vast majority of those who have been killed in Gaza so far are innocent civilians, children, women, and the elderly. And the worry there is that the death toll will rise significantly, that more innocents will be killed. How is this going to be part of the IDF strategy going in?
The IDF strategy is to keep very religiously to the international rules of war, the law of war, 1946, you can check it. And we have been doing it all the time. Even now, the aerial bombardments are aimed against Hezbollah, sorry, my mistake, Hamas posts, command posts and positions, not civilians. And the military warned, including a lot of telephone calls, warned civilians to go to the south of the El Arish river. So it's not a river, it's an empty, dry riverbed, but south of that, everybody knows where it is. And this way, the whole area that the army must conquer, in order to destroy Hamas, will be evacuated by civilians. Those of them, most of them did, but some of them stayed. The idea is not to kill civilians if you can help it. But if Hamas, which they do as a matter of policy, hiding behind their civilians, schools, hospitals, and so on, then Israel has the right to shoot. But the idea is to do everything not to kill civilians. And there is a humanitarian, which I believe truly to be the case with our military. I was myself a senior officer. And so it's very important, crucial. But secondly, if you look at it in a cynical way, every Palestinian civilian we kill is going to haunt us internationally by every government in the world. So, and it did happen in the past. So Israel's very high interest is to avoid civilian casualties. Can it be done? I hope, hopefully yes. but it's not certain. It's because these are the rules of war. You still have to fight a war and you have to achieve your purpose, which is to dismantle Hamas completely and leave Gaza under international rule with some West Bank control as well.
One of the reasons why many governments, as well as UN agencies, have been calling for a ceasefire is to, of course, spare the lives of the innocent civilians. And many worry that a ground invasion may invite other non-state actors, primarily, Hezbollah, to join in thereby expanding the war beyond Gaza. What is your reading, given your expertise, on this current situation and how other players may also join in?
I'll put it this way. First of all, if we don't do the land incursion, Israel is finished. I mean it. The whole south will run to Tel Aviv. So half of Israel is evacuated. And the whole north will run to Tel Aviv as well. Israel is finished. We have to make sure that this will never happen. This atrocity will never happen again. And that Hezbollah will know that what we did to Hamas, not to the Gaza population, if we in any way can avoid it, but to Hamas, is good enough for them to draw conclusions from. That's number one. Number two, Israel is hugely lucky. Most Israelis don't understand how lucky we are after the 7th, on the 7th of October. Had Hezbollah attacked us simultaneously with Hamas, Hezbollah from the north, from the Galilee, Hamas from the south, from Gaza, I would say, instead of having about 1,400 dead and 200 or 300, 200, and the numbers are growing, and 23 today, hostages, we would have perhaps 100,000 dead. Civilians. I'm not going to go into the details why, but this, in my experience, this is what would have happened. We are very lucky that Hezbollah knew nothing about the Hamas initiative, nothing. They were taken by complete surprise. So they were not ready to launch a war from the north. And in the meantime, it took us 3 days to get ready for them. Now we are. But that was huge stroke of luck, and it sounds amazing to say this, bearing in mind what happened in the south. All these murders and rapes and butchery and of civilians, children. So the whole thing is now evolving about what Hezbollah would do. It didn't know it happened. They didn't know it would happen. Iran is not pushing them to join, but it's 50% their decision. They can decide to join. And why would they join? Because last April, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah met with two very important leaders of Hamas and of Islamic Jihad in Gaza. He met with them in Beirut, and he gave them an open check, carte blanche. If you start the war, when you start the war, we shall support you. This is what Hezbollah said, not he in his own mouth, in your own words, but Hezbollah published, after the meeting, published some kind of a communique. And so Hamas didn't tell Hezbollah, we are going to rise and shine on the 7th of October. But Hamas relied on Hezbollah to be as good as their promise. For the last 19 days, 19 days, Nasrallah, who is a television junkie, I've never seen a world leader, maybe we have one here, but Nasrallah is a television junkie. He loves his TV, flowery speeches, and I find it fascinating. For 19 days, my mistake, he didn't speak on TV. He didn't show his face, except on some kind of a small photograph with him and the same two leaders, the other day, 2 days ago. But nothing came out after that meeting. No promise to join them.
So you're saying, if I may just interrupt you, you're saying that he has not showed up since the October 7th attack.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And so now the reason is I'm not a psychologist, but I'm an historian of Middle East, and I've been following this guy from the day he became head of, from the early 90s, head of Hezbollah. If he is not saying anything, either way, it means that he doesn't know what he should do. He's really sitting on the horns of a dilemma. If he joins, and he had promised, if he joins, he will be regarded as a great hero by many, I'm sure. But it will involve, which he didn't expect. He is now surprised, and Hamas are surprised by the American response and by the European response. No, Hamas doesn't understand the West. Hamas didn't think that butchering and beheading and raping and shooting girls, children, that kind of thing would arise such anger in the West. America, Germany, France, Britain, they didn't think so. Now it happened, and now they are surprised too. So they understand the Brits are sending a warship. The Americans have now a battle group of a carrier facing Lebanon's shores. Hezbollah are surprised because everybody, including Hamas, thought that Bibi, Prime Minister Netanyahu, was so unpopular in the West. He was bad news to most Western leaders. So they couldn't help this guy. But yes, they do. And this is a price to it. So Hezbollah has to think, if I join the fray, which they still might, I'm not saying they won't, but chances are a bit less than 50%, that's all. If Nasrallah must be thinking now in his bunker, if I join the fray fully fledged, full steam ahead, maybe America will get involved as well. They sort of hinted that they would. They didn't commit themselves, they hinted. Israel said, we are going to destroy half of Lebanon. And Nasrallah, am trying to show since I became head of Hezbollah, that I am not an Iranian stooge, that I'm a Lebanese patriot in the first place. So if I bring about the destruction of Lebanon, because I help the Palestinians much as I sympathize with the Palestinians, of course, the Lebanese will never forgive me. So I can still sit on my bayonets. You know, Napoleon Bonaparte said, you can do a lot of things with bayonets, but you cannot sit on them. Hezbollah can sit on their bayonets. They can, but it's very, very uncomfortable. And they didn't do it so far. They didn't need to do it. And all of a sudden, if they cause a destruction of half of Lebanon, then from then on, they'll have to sit on their bayonets. Very, very unpleasant for them and for their Iranian bosses. I'll just say that they already, when the whole thing started on the 7th of October, Hezbollah were already in deep trouble because until last year, they had the majority in parliament, a secure majority in parliament. So they had a prime minister of their liking. They had a President Aoun, of their liking. But now a year ago, there were elections, and they lost their majority. So Lebanon, so the opposition to Hezbollah and their supporters, coalition, are basically sort of equal in parliament. And no one can have the majority, A, to build a government, and B, to elect a president that will be to their liking. Hezbollah is very worried that if a new president, who will not be to their liking, will order them to disarm. Now, they'll never disarm, no way. But once the president and the prime minister order them to disarm, from then on, they'll have to sit on the bayonets, and they didn't need to do it until now. So if they join the war and Lebanon is destroyed, or much of it, they will lose all support amongst the non-Shia population. So that's number one. Just a second, sorry. If they don't join the war, even though they promised to, they implied. They didn't say, what they said now is, after the 7th of October, they said, if Israel invades Gaza, land invasion, land incursion, then we shall reconsider our position. But they haven't yet committed themselves clearly. So the point is, if he joins the war, he'll pay very dearly for it, and maybe even Hezbollah will be destroyed. He has to think about it. Maybe not. Israel will suffer horrendously. You cannot imagine what. I think most of Haifa will be leveled, and I live in Haifa, and I know that. I have no illusions because of their missiles and rockets. It's like real bad. But Lebanon will suffer more. So, and the Lebanese who are not Shiites will not be able to forgive it ever. If he does not join the war, when Israel goes into a land incursion, he will appear as a coward. People will say to him, you're a coward, you made a promise. Even Hamas will say it. Hamas are saying to him, rise and shine now. And the Arab world will see him as a coward, and the Islamic world will see him as a coward. It's not good. It's even bad. But
so both ways, whether Hezbollah enters or not, they will lose credibility for different reasons. But it seems that so far...
Except if they join, they might even be destroyed, and they'll be really a pariah in Lebanon forever. If they don't join, they'll just lose face. So if the question is this, is Nasrallah still thinking rationally? Because the Iranians are not applying pressure on him to enter to join the fray. Not at all. But if he is still rational, as I know him to be, if he's still thinking in a reasonable fashion, strategic thinking, with Americans there and the British there, and Israel is still having a strong military still, I think he will not join. But it's possible, and that's my fear, it's possible that after all these years ahead of Hezbollah with unlimited power, really unlimited power in Lebanon, it happens to leaders. It does happen. It happened to Saddam Hussein. It happens to leaders. He thinks that he's all powerful, that he's omnipotent, and that I can do anything. And then he might join. So it's a matter of his psychology more than anything else. But I'd say that today, more than 50% of 99% of the decision is on him. Now, he knows also, I'll end by that, he also knows that many, I'm not sure how many, 20%, 30% of the Shiis of Lebanon, his own people, his own community, do not want him to join the war for obvious reasons. So he could decide not to. But if he's no longer really rational, he will join the war, and then all hell will break loose. First of all, I think we shall be in big danger here in the Israeli north, very big danger, because he can lob at us 1,500 warheads every day. I'll just remind our listeners, viewers, that in 2006, when we had the last confrontation with Hezbollah, they could, and they did, lob at us 100 warheads every day. The whole of Israel, mostly Haifa. Today, instead of 100, they can lob at us 1,500 every day for about...
Their military capability has improved
in
thanks to Iran's...
For about a whole month. They have a lot. They have about 150,000 warheads, including some very accurate. So we shall pay a huge price, and that's why we are not happy to do it at all. We prefer that he stays home, but he will pay more. He'll pay a heavier price.
Yeah.
So that's his dilemma. We don't have a dilemma. We don't want him to join in. He has a dilemma. What should I do?
Yeah. One last question, Professor, given your expertise in Iraq as well, because we've seen some of the militant Shia groups, basically hit American targets. And then in the aftermath of that, diplomacy kicked in with various phone calls between U.S. officials, including the president, as well, basically to Iraqi Prime Minister. What do you think? How do you think Iran will factor in the Iraq arena, because they're very much in control of various Shia militant groups there?
In case Hezbollah joined the fray, about half the Iraqi pro-Iranian Shi'i militias will join the fray as well. I have no doubt, about half. I can give you the names, it doesn't matter. Don't want to go through details. Not all of them, because not all of them agree to this, but about half of them will. And the result will be they will attack American installations, for sure, in Kurdistan, in Iraq, in Syria. And they will attack Israel too. Look, they have missiles that can reach from Iraq, can reach Israel. I remind you, in 1991, when Saddam Hussein and the Americans had some misunderstanding, right, in Kuwait, Saddam lobbed at us about 39 missiles from Iraq. They have Iranian missiles stocked, which they can use, and from Iraq launch at Israel. They can do that. Some of them will go even to southern Lebanon and fight alongside Hezbollah against our troops.
You mean some of the Shia militants in Iraq?
Some of the Shia militants in Iraq. Will Iran prevent it? No. Iran will encourage it, except Iran itself will try to keep out of the fray. The Iranians are ready, not that they are happy to do it now, this is not the right time for them, but still, if necessary, they will be ready to fight Israel to the last Arab. You must understand it. They don't like to send Iranian to the war or to get Iran involved in that war.
So they just use their proxies and spare Iranian lives.
They can sacrifice, if there is no other way, they can sacrifice their Arab allies, Arab supporters. Again, I don't think they want Hezbollah. If you ask Khamenei, the Rahabar, the great leader in Tehran, would you like Hezbollah to join the fray? He would say no. I'd like them to maybe scale up a little bit what they are doing now, which they are doing, of course. Or they already lost 40 people, and we lost about 7, which is bad. But anyway, that's not reason enough for us to begin a war. And even if he scales it up a little bit, I don't see Israel going to war for that. And the Americans don't want us to, and we don't want to. But to get into the war fully fledged, to really jump with everything he has into the war, Iran is not keen on it. But the decision is now his. It's not Khamenei. He is making the Nasrallah is the one who is making the decision. But the Iraqis will support him, about half of them, yes.
Professor Amatzia Baram, thank you very much for your time and for sharing your expertise with us today. Thank you.
It's my pleasure and my honor, and Godspeed to the Woodrow Wilson Center.